Genshin Impact's new 5.0 expansion brings the new nation of Natlan with new mechanics, tons of areas to explore, and of course, brand new characters debuting with some highly anticipated rerun characters. This brand new expansion will be the first time people can wish for Kinich and Mualani, and we're also getting the extremely useful tried and tested characters, Raiden and Kazuha, alongside them. And while some people already know exactly who they want to get, a lot of people are having trouble deciding, especially with the new nation, these new mechanics, and the new characters. That's why in this video, I'll go over Kinich, Mualani, Raiden, and Kazuha's strengths, weaknesses, team viability, and overall value. That way you'll know which one of these 5 stars is most worth your primogems. After I break down each character, I will tell you who is the best value for your precious primos and give you a proven strategy that will help you get the characters you really want in the future. Each of the 5 stars on this list will receive a rating from bad to great in several categories, including personal damage, support capability, team flexibility, and free-to-play friendliness. I'll also recommend characters that would make good teammates for these specific 5 stars, since you often need very specific characters to really unlock the power of a limited 5 star. But as always, if you know who you want already, then just wish for them. This is a guide to help clarify what the patch 5.0 limited 5 stars can do well and what they struggle with. That way you'll be better prepared to solve any problems that arise when you play them. Just know that Kinich and Mualani are new 5 stars, so we'll still need to test them in order to fully understand how good they are, but based on the info we have, we can still give them a proper evaluation. Make sure to like this video to receive the blessing of Shark Luck, share it with anyone you think it can help, and let me know who you're pulling for in the comments. Now we're moving on to the Pixel Pulverizer and Derezzed Dendro Blaster, Kinich. Kinich is a claymore-wielding, on-field Dendro damage dealer whose special ability basically turns him into Wisdom Form Sora from Kingdom Hearts. I personally think he has some of the cleanest and best animations in all of Genshin Impact, but is he all flash with no substance? Let's take a look at his kit. Kinich is a Dendro character that incentivizes playing a Burning or Burgeon team. His playstyle revolves around his elemental skill. When he uses this skill, he grapple hooks onto enemies and then Spider-Man swings around them, while also skating and blasting them with Dendro damage. During this state, his Night Soul Blessing will charge up, and when it's maxed out, Kinich can fire a devastatingly strong Dendro Cannonball. The faster you can charge up this Night Soul Blessing, the more giant cannonballs you can shoot, and there's several ways to do just that. You get some charge points every second you spend in his elemental skill state. You get some from doing normal attacks. You also get points when enemies are burning or someone in your team triggers Burgeon. And finally, you get more points when you enter a special zone that is highlighted on the ground. So to play Kinich, you'll want to use team members that can set up Burning or Burgeon, and then use his elemental skill to grapple onto an enemy, then find the special zone highlighted on the ground, spin towards it, and accumulate points until you can fire off your Dendro cannon shot. And then you find the next highlighted zone on the ground, and then repeat. And while Kinich is definitely incentivized to play in a Burning or a Burgeon team, he doesn't have to. You get about 1 extra cannon shot on average in a Burning or a Burgeon team, and that does amount to a lot of damage, but his personal damage isn't completely neutered if you decide to play him in a different team. So he does have a team that he really wants to play in, but is overall way less restrictive with team building than a character like Nilou, who cannot access her damage unless she's in a very specific team composition. Kinich's Elemental Burst is one of my favorite animations out of all of them, and it shows everyone the true power of a digital Dragon Lord, which is to say that it does some Dendro damage over time, but it's not nearly as overpowered as it looks. Kinich's playstyle makes him look very slick, but it also makes him a lot more elusive and less reliant on defensive support characters. And undoubtedly people will compare Kinich to Alhaitham, but the two actually differ in some important ways. First, Alhaitham does much better with Electro characters in a Spread or Aggravate team, while Kinich does much better in a Burning or Burgeon team. Secondly, Alhaitham has a bit lower personal damage, but because he does really well in Quicken teams, his team members end up contributing a lot of damage overall. whereas Kinich's personal damage is a bit higher, but outside of a few situations, his teams contribute much less damage overall. Kinich also has a bit more limited AoE range than you might expect, and it's a bit hard to hit multiple enemies unless they are grouped up together tightly. His burst does help with his AoE damage, but sadly the burst damage is nowhere near as strong as his cannon shots. So how good is Kinich overall? Will he one-shot 360 no-scope all of your enemies, or will it be game over if you wish for him? It's time to give Kinich a rating. Kinich's personal damage is good to great. His damage is a bit higher than most Dendro characters, and this is due to the fact that he's not designed for the quicken reaction, which amplifies Dendro damage. Instead, he simply has higher talent scaling and uses Pyro as a means to get to those higher scaling elemental skill cannon shots more frequently. And like most hyper carry style characters, he has a high ceiling for damage, so the more you invest into him, the harder he will hit compared to other characters. Kinich's support capability is bad. Kinich is a typical on-field damage dealer that does not contribute to the team if he's not on the field, so instead of him helping out the rest of the team, you'll need to build a team around him. Kinich's team flexibility is good. While trying to make a Burning or Burgeon team with Kinich may feel a bit restrictive, he does just fine in other teams, especially if you have some really strong off-field damage dealers and supports. He is not going to reach his maximum potential in a Quicken team or a Quick Bloom team with some Electro characters, but honestly those teams can be really strong and sometimes make up for the loss in his personal damage. But if you play Kinich, my recommendation would just be to use Xiangling and Bennett with him because he just synergizes so well with them. Kinich's free-to-play friendliness is good. He has some great free-to-play teammates like Xiangling and Bennett, and you really don't need too much else if you want a good free-to-play Kinich team that will perform at high levels. He also has access to several good free-to-play weapons, from past event claymores like the Ultimate Overlord's Mega Magic Sword, and the Natlan craftable weapon is also a great option for him. Kinich's overall rating is good. Kinich is not going to break the Genshin meta, but he is a solid damage dealer that is quite free-to-play friendly, and also feels quite satisfying to play. He's a decent 5-star for newer players because it's relatively easy to access his damage, and the characters he works well with also scale very well into the endgame. He's also a decent choice for veteran players who have strong characters already and just want someone that feels a bit different while also being able to pump out good damage. However, he is not necessary if you already have Alhaitham. But if you happen to have Emily, or just want to play a Burning or Burgeon team, he might just scratch your kin itch. Recommended teammates for Kinich include Emily, Xiangling, Bennett, Nahida, Kazuha, Kokomi, Farina, and basically anyone who helps trigger Burning, Burgeon, or increases elemental skill damage. Now let's move on to Mualani, the shark surfing chomptastic tour guide, who's obviously awesome because she loves sharks.
Send me through the sharkification process immediately!
But is she actually strong? Mualani is an on-field Hydro Catalyst user, yes, another one, whose damage is based on her max HP. Her playstyle revolves around her elemental skill, and when you use it, you begin surfing. You can surf through enemies, and doing so marks them, granting you up to 3 stacks. The stacks allow you to unleash your jawsome shark power to chomp on enemies. Her surfing ability does not do damage nor apply hydro, and you have a few seconds in between each chomp. This means that Mualani is designed to be a strong vaporized carry and do double the hydro damage she would normally do when hitting an enemy who has already had pyro applied to them. When she uses the shark bite, she clears all of the marks applied to the enemies from surfing, and then she releases several shark missiles that deal more damage the fewer enemies there are. Her surfing state continuously consumes Nightsoul points, and you'll see a little meter on the side of her, which lets you know how long you can maintain your sharktastic surf mode. Her elemental burst is a super shark missile that deals significant damage based on her max HP, but doesn't have any special effects other than hitting hard. Mualani is a bit limited in terms of AoE damage, and she's even incentivized to fight against fewer opponents, because the shark missiles released after she consumes her stacks and clears the marked enemies will deal less damage the more enemies there are. This makes her not as versatile as Neuvillette, who is another on-field hydro damage dealer that she is in direct competition with. So, how good is our Shark Girl? Is she a true champion, or is she all washed up thanks to the influence of Big Dolphin and the Dolphin propagandists? It's time to give Mualani a rating. Mualani's personal damage is good to great. She has a very high damage ceiling, but without the right teams, setups, and rotations, it can be hard to actually reach her damage potential. In this way, she's a bit similar to a character like Hu Tao. Very high damage potential, but when playing her, getting to that damage potential is not always consistent. Mualani's support capability is bad. She is an on-field damage dealer, and if she's not on the field dealing damage or surfing with her shark, then she does not contribute to the team. Mualani's team flexibility is good. Her teams may seem a bit limiting at first because she really only wants to be in a vaporized team or a Farina team, but that actually opens up a surprising amount of options because she doesn't need too many specific characters to be good. And because she applies Hydro rather slowly, this makes a surprising amount of characters work well with her. Xiangling is an obvious great choice for a strong vaporized team, and Farina in a double Hydro or mono Hydro team is also very strong, and you can even use someone like Emily in a burning team that has very slow Hydro application, and it will still work well. Mualani is a lot less limited than some other characters, but she's still hardly among the most versatile damage dealers that we have. Mualani's free-to-play friendliness is good. Everyone can get Xiangling for free, and she's one of Mualani's best supports. And because she doesn't need that many specific characters to be good, Mualani, Xiangling, and 2 Flexbots are a solid free-to-play team option for players who don't have that many characters. She also has good free-to-play weapon options, and you can use either the craftable Prototype Amber or the free-to-play Natlan Catalyst. Mualani's overall rating is good. She is a strong on-field Hydro damage dealer, and as much as I am biased towards sharks, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that she is nowhere near as strong as Neuvillette. Mualani is definitely good, but she does not have nearly the level of AoE capability, comfort, and general ease of play as Neuvillette does. So if you have Neuvillette already, you don't need Mualani, especially because Neuvillette will just be stronger than her at the same level of investment. That being said, I am of course pulling for her because Shark! Recommended teammates for Mualani include Xiangling, Farina, Kazuha, and Emily as some good picks for her, but really she does well with just about anyone who can apply enough Pyro off-field and any supports that buff elemental and normal attack damage. Our next 5-star is one that people have waited an eternity to rerun. It's the Raiden Shogun. Raiden is a polearm-wielding electro damage dealer that works on-field and off-field. Most people will know her for her on-field damage role, but her off-field damage playstyle does work particularly well in a Hyperbloom team. Especially since there are not too many good characters that can reliably hit the Dendro cores to proc the Hyperbloom reaction off-field. Raiden's kit can seem a bit overwhelming if you try to read it, so let me simplify it for you. Raiden's normal attacks are not needed for her kit, as you don't even need to level them up for her to deal great damage. Raiden's skill summons an electro ring with an eye that follows behind you and your characters and can be kept up permanently. This skill has 2 major functions. The first is that this skill will do a coordinated electro attack in a small AoE about once per second when your active character attacks. And this aspect of the skill is what makes Raiden a good candidate for creating the Hyperbloom reaction, since she doesn't even need to be on the field for the attack to trigger. Just know that this skill will not trigger against enemies that are shielded like Abyss Mages, so that's kind of a bummer. The second function of her skill is that it allows her to accumulate stacks whenever you receive an energy particle or a character uses their elemental burst. These stacks increase the amount of damage her elemental burst does. And Raiden's burst is definitely what she's most known for because that's where she pulls a giant sword out of her chest. Raiden's burst uses all of these stacks you've accumulated from your elemental skill and then converts those stacks into a stronger initial hit of her burst. In her elemental burst state, her normal and charge attacks are infused with electro and considered to be elemental burst damage. This is the reason why you don't need to level her normal attacks, because they don't actually affect her in this state at all. This does bring about some weird properties though, because while in her burst form, Raiden cannot trigger Beto's burst, but Xingqiu and Yulan's burst will still work. So again, that's just Genshin being inconsistent with their wording, but at least she works with those broken Hydro supports, so we'll take that as a win. She also generates flat energy for your team whenever she hits an enemy in her burst form, and she has infinite interruption resistance in this state. This means that she still takes damage in her burst form, but she can keep attacking like nothing is even touching her. So how good is Raiden? Is she still the excellent almighty Narukami Gosho, God of Thunder, or does she need to spend more time meditating in the plane of Euthymia? It's time to give Raiden a rating. Raiden's personal damage is great. She can hit really hard with her elemental burst, especially when paired with the emblem of the Severed Fate artifact set and other characters that have high energy costs burst. She can also do great damage off-field in a Hyper Bloom team when built with tons of elemental mastery. And I should also say that her damage is great at C0 and without her signature weapon. Her second constellation is incredibly powerful, but it will not increase your damage by 60% like some people think. It will realistically increase your on-field damage by about half of that, which is still massive, but that also means that you're spending enough primogems to get 2 other C0 5-stars just to make Raiden stronger. For some people that is totally worth it, but just know that Raiden is still absurdly strong without any constellations. Likewise, you really don't need her signature weapon. It is undoubtedly great for her, but the catch is a free-to-play option that also has tons of synergy with Raiden, and it is the best free-to-play weapon in the game. So don't feel forced to go for her Constellation 2 or her signature weapon if you want her to deal great damage. Raiden's support capability is good. Her burst allows her to give your team flat energy, which is an amazing buff for very energy-hungry characters like Xingqiu and Xiangling, allowing them to build more offensive stats instead of energy recharge percent when paired with Raiden. Her skill working off-field is also important for support, as it allows her to be a great trigger for the Hyper Bloom reaction. She's not as strong a support character as the other Archons or dedicated supports are, but the fact that she is still a great on-field damage dealer while also being a strong off-field damage dealer with support capabilities is quite remarkable. Raiden's team flexibility is great. Because she can be on-field or off-field, Raiden has many different team options. Her on-field teams can be aggravate teams to enhance her personal damage using a Dendro character, or a team where her purpose is to enable other characters to deal more damage and get their elemental bursts back more easily, like the Raiden National Team with Xiangling, Xingqiu, and Bennett. Or she can be used as a hyper carry in a hyper carry style team with someone like Kazuha and Kujo Sara to maximize Raiden's personal damage. She also does incredibly well when built with elemental mastery for a Hyper Bloom team, allowing her to play in an off-field role too. She just pairs well with so many good characters that it's easy to make Raiden work with almost any team. Raiden's free-to-play friendliness is great. Raiden can thoroughly make use of the catch, a 4-star polearm you get from fishing. In the hands of the right wielder, this is the best free-to-play weapon in the game, and Raiden makes excellent use of it. Raiden also works on a variety of different teams, both on and off-field. She brings powerful on-field DPS, good off-field DPS that can be permanently up, and a bit of team support on top of everything else. Raiden's overall rating is great. Raiden has the capabilities to be a very strong on-field DPS in a variety of teams, or a good off-field DPS and reliable trigger for Hyper Bloom reactions. Her free-to-play weapon options are great, and she is somehow more versatile now than when she originally came out. Recommended teammates for Raiden include Nahida, Dendro Traveler, Yulan, Xingqiu, Farina, Fischl, Kujo Sara, Yaimiko, Sucrose, Kazuha, Xiangling, and Bennett. The next character on the list is one that people have been waiting ages for. It's the Maple Leaf Ronin, Kazuha. Kazuha is an animo support character that brings a lot of utility, like grouping and damage amplification, but he also does a good amount of personal damage, and he's been one of the most desired characters in Genshin Impact because his kit is so strong and he's also very fun to play. Kazuha's elemental skill pops him into the air before pulling enemies right up underneath him and then slams down right on top of their heads. This elemental skill can also get an infusion of Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro for even more damage. Kazuha's elemental burst is a large wind wall that deals damage in a sizable AoE and can be infused with Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro to deal additional elemental and swirl damage. This elemental burst makes up a majority of Kazuha's damage, but he can still amplify the team's elemental damage even further. Kazuha has a passive talent that allows him to increase the damage of the elements that he infuses by a percentage of his elemental mastery. And since Elemental Mastery also increases swirl damage, there is a great synergy between increasing Kazuha's own swirl damage and increasing the damage of your Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro characters when using Kazuha. Because of these features, Kazuha is pretty simple to build and play. You simply get enough energy recharge to be able to use his elemental burst off cooldown, and then you give him as much elemental mastery as possible while maintaining a 4-piece Viridescent Veneer artifact set. Then you simply use your elemental skill to pull enemies in, then you slam down on top of them, then use his elemental burst to deal lots of damage in an AoE, and switch off to your other Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro characters to do increased damage with them. So how valuable is Kazuha for your account? It's time to give the Maple Leaf Maelstrom a rating. Kazuha's personal damage is great. Kazuha's talent damage is very good, but if you combine that with the 4-piece Viridescent set and the amount of swirl damage he can do with a high elemental mastery build, Kazuha's personal damage becomes very, very strong. However, the amount of damage Kazuha can do can often go unnoticed because swirls don't crit, and the text size for swirls is always much smaller than a large crit number. The fact that Kazuha's damage is as high as it is frankly absurd because he was designed as a support, and yet he can eclipse some hypercarries in terms of personal damage. Kazuha's support capability is great. Kazuha pairs extremely well with any Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro character, and that's over half the elements in the game. Not only can he significantly increase the damage of any Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro character, but he brings additional utility that's also very helpful. Kazuha's grouping mechanic on his elemental skill is extremely nice to get enemies close together so that you can deal AoE damage to them, but it also has the ability to break an enemy's stance and therefore interrupt their attacks as it pulls them towards you. This can be extremely valuable when fighting enemies that have very annoying attack and movement patterns like Mirror Maidens. Everyone knows Kazuha for his damage amplification abilities, but his ability to group enemies and also interrupt their attacks is one of the reasons why his support capability is so great. Kazuha's team flexibility is great. There are very few teams that would not benefit from having Kazuha. Pretty much mono Geo, Xiao teams, or physical teams are some of the only ones. But if a team uses a Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro character, then there's a very good chance that Kazuha can make it better. And even in teams that don't necessarily need Kazuha, like Hyperbloom teams, he can still be a very good option. Even in mono-element teams, they're usually not ever truly a single element because they almost always have Kazuha. If you're running mono Hydro, it's usually 3 Hydro characters and Kazuha. If you're running mono Pyro, it's usually 3 Pyro characters and Kazuha. Because Kazuha works with so many different elements, he just becomes an incredibly flexible character. Kazuha's free-to-play friendliness is great. Kazuha can use free-to-play craftable weapons like the Iron Sting to great effect because it gives a lot of elemental mastery. He can also use the Fluvsond Ferryman, the fishing weapon from Fontaine, to get more energy recharge, which he also desperately needs. There are also event weapons like the Tokabu Shigure, which are great on Kazuha and give him an interesting little bit of flair. And because Kazuha's team flexibility and support capabilities are so high, he's great with so many different characters, so just about anyone can use him on their account. Whether you're fighting waves of enemies, large groups of enemies, or single enemies like bosses, Kazuha offers a great amount of support and can be played with so many different characters that he's an incredibly valuable pick for anyone. And it's probably no surprise, but Kazuha's overall rating is great. Kazuha is worth it for just about everyone who wants to play a Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro character at some point in Genshin Impact. And while you can definitely use characters like Sucrose or Venti as substitutes for Kazuha, I think Kazuha just feels so much better to play, and I think that's valuable as well. So just know that if you pick up Kazuha, he will be a support that benefits your account forever. Recommended teammates for Kazuha include any Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro characters and the teams based off of those elemental reactions. And with the ratings finished, who should you wish for? Well, the good news is there's not really any bad choice among the 5.0 characters, because they're all good, but some are certainly better than others. Kazuha is the best choice overall because he offers the most in terms of team building variety, personal damage, support, and long-term value. Kazuha just becomes more and more valuable the more characters you have, which is what makes him incredibly good as a character for newer players or for players without a lot of characters, because as they gain more characters, Kazuha just becomes better and better. And for veterans with a lot of characters already, Kazuha automatically becomes one of the best characters they can pick up. Raiden, Mualani, and Kinich are all relatively in the same tier, just below Kazuha, but I have to give the edge to Raiden as the second best. Her damage is very good, but Mualani and Kinich will simply hit harder than her at the same level of investment. However, Raiden isn't too far behind the new Natlan 5 stars, and she continues to get more and better teams. Raiden with Chevreuse, Bennett, and Xiangling is super comfy and super powerful, and I can only imagine how much better a team like this can get with Mavuika or another Natlan Pyro off-field damage dealer or support. Raiden is also great as a Hyper Bloom trigger, which is currently a role that very few characters can fill from off-field. And the more we analyze Raiden, the more it becomes clear. She has many different team options, a few different builds and playstyles. She's great for free-to-play players, but also scales well with investing into her or other characters, and that's why she's such a great character and my number 2 pick. Kazuha just happens to have all of the advantages Raiden does, but will also greatly benefit your team in even more situations. Mualani and Kinich are both strong on-field damage dealers, but they lack the variety and versatility that Raiden and Kazuha bring. They have unique playstyles, and people will find them very satisfying, but if you aren't sure who to wish for, I strongly recommend skipping these two new Natlan characters and going for Kazuha if you don't have him. But if you already have Raiden and Kazuha and are considering Mualani or Kinich, you can always wait until the 5.1 livestream, which will be during the second phase of patch 5.0. Doing this will make you miss out on Mualani, but if you're on the fence about Kinich or another new 5-star or potential 5-star reruns, you'll be able to know who is coming before Kinich's banner expires. If Hoyo follows the same pattern, it's likely going to be another Archon in 5.1 and subsequent patches. Now, if you feel your specific situation might be different, and if you're unsure who to wish for, you are welcome to come by my Twitch stream and ask who is best for you. You can tell me who you want, who you have, and I can give you a personal recommendation on who would be best for you. I stream daily in the mornings, Eastern Standard Time, and you can come catch me live at twitch.tv/sharkheart. That's SHARKH3ART. I hope this review has been helpful and clarified the value of certain characters for you. Please let me know which characters you are wishing for, and don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch and ask for my shark blessing. 50% of the time, it works 100% of the time. I love you, stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.